Today I'm going to review Quantum of Solace, made in 2008. It's Daniel Craig's second outing as James Bond, and it's probably one of the most underrated Bond films, I think. The reason is it came after Casino Royale, which is probably the way I think it's the best Bond film ever made, and it's highly regarded. So this was a direct sequel from that film. And I think that's the reason why folk didn't think it was all that good a Bond film, because they were comparing it. Because it is a direct sequel. It follows on just a few minutes after the last film finished. It's not as good as Casino Royale, but it is a pretty good film and it is underrated. The film cost about 2 million to make, between 2 million to 230 million to make, and it made about 589 million. The song's not too bad. It gets a lot of criticism, but I've heard a lot worse. The titles are interesting as well. There's lots of sand, because the film's features deserts and stuff, so in the titles they use sand, images of Bond and bullets flying across the screen. The film only runs 106 minutes, so that's about 1 hour and 45 minutes. That's probably the shortest Bond film, because usually they're well over 2 hours. That kind of works in the film's advantage, because it quickens the pace up a bit. Some of the editing could have been better though. The trouble with action films, some of them have bad editing. To do a good action sequence, you've got to have establishing shots of the situation, so the viewer, the audience, can remember where everything's at before all the fast movement and action takes place. So like an establishing shot of like pointing out this is here, and what the situation is, so like the viewer can instinctively remember parts of the geography of the action sequence, and then when the action does start we don't get confused. But when stuff's badly edited and badly shot, like just quick action sequences, jump cuts and stuff like that, you can confuse the audience. So that's when action sequences are directed badly. What I liked about this film's kind of the storyline. There's an organisation called Quantum. They're a bit like Spectre. It's an organisation that has people in high places, sort of like elite positions, and I kind of like that. It's quite realistic actually, because there's a lot of conspiracy theories saying that there's a 1% that controls the world. They're in high positions of power, and this film's kind of a little bit like that. Sort of like the 1%, like a pyramid, and the 1%'s at the top. They control everyone down the pyramid, and so Bond's trying to get this organisation to stop.
I hate the bloody elite. I don't trust the buggers.
The film has lots of different locations as well. They use a font when they go to a different location, and the font's different. So like if they go to Italy, the writing's all Italy and it's all different looking. England, it's like standard font. So I thought that was pretty clever. The film opens with a great car chase. It's like quiet to start with, and then all of a sudden there's a massive loud car noise, and it's probably one of the biggest noise jumps I've heard. It really starts the action off. Daniel Craig looks good in the part still. He still looks young and fit. There's bike chases, there's boat chases, there's running over rooftops. He's even in one sequence where he's in a plane and he skydives down, jumps out the plane. So there's loads of sequences like that. The villain's really good as well, Dominic Greene. He's like more realistic, and he comes across as a right sleazy twat. Doesn't he, Bones?
It was a right bloody shithouse.
Bond meets this agent called Fails, Strawberry Fails, and she's like robotic. It's quite funny. She's funny in the part, but she has a interesting death. In the film, she's covered in oil, and it reminds me of, instead of oil, it was gold in Goldfinger. She was covered in gold. This one, she's covered in oil. So I like that. That was a nice little nod to Goldfinger. There's a good scene when Bond's friend Mathis, who was also in Casino Royale, he dies and Bond's holding him, and after he dies, Bond just throws him in a skip. So, but it's a really sad scene. They seem to have a good friendship between them two, Mathis and Bond, in the film. There's a good scene where Bond's drinking, thinking of Vesper, who died in Casino Royale, and he still hasn't gotten over her. And Mathis knows that, so there's quite a sad scene where they're in a bar together. The Bond girl's interesting as well. Bond doesn't sleep with her in the film. Like in every other film, he sleeps with the Bond girl, but in this one he doesn't. So that was an interesting take. It's because he's still thinking of Vesper in Casino Royale. There's some good action towards the end of the film as well, where there's explosions and fire and stuff. And there's one scene when it looks like Bond and the Bond girl's trapped and they're going to die with flames and stuff, and Bond's got a gun, and there's a moment where he's holding her like that, and he's considering just shouting them both, but then he decides to shout his way out through a window. So that was a lot of tension in that scene. There's a brilliant scene right at the end when Bond finally meets the boyfriend who was manipulating Vesper.
Sit
and
down.
He's considering shooting him, but right at the end he actually just lets him go to the authorities, and M's outside and Bond tells her what's happened, and she's like surprised that Bond didn't shoot him, but it's symbolic. It's like Bond's finally become professional, and as he walks away, the film ends with the titles where Bond has the gun barrel thing and he does that, bang. So the film actually ends with that. So it's kind of saying that he's become James Bond. So it's like an origin story, the first two Daniel Craig films. It's really good, that. It's clever. So overall, I think I'd rate this film. It's very underrated. Like, fans usually say it's one of the worst in the series, and that they'd probably like want to give it 3 or 4 out of 10. But I think out of 10, I'd give this film. It's almost a 10 out of 10 actually. I think I'd give it 9. I'd give it a 9 out of 10 because it's a brilliant film. Very, very underrated. So what would you give it out of 10, Bones? Did you like it?
I thought the bugger was shit out, better than the last bugger he made.
Okay, everybody, bye! Bye!